let's make a start and learn how to make some right decisions.
Yeah, I'll start reading. I haven't read for a while, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Christos.
Okay, I won't be reading. I just listen to you guys if you don't mind. Thank you so much beforehand.
Okay, not.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Okay, Chapter 8, Decision, the master of procrastination, the seventh step toward riches. Accurate analysis of over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure disclosed the fact that lack of decision was near the head of the list of the 30 major causes of failure. This is no mere statement of theory. It is a fact. Procrastination, the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer. You'll have an opportunity to test your capacity to reach quick and definite decisions when you finish reading this book and are ready to begin putting into action the principles which it describes. Analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing these decisions slowly, if at all, if and when they were changed. People who failed to accumulate money, without exception, have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly, and of changing these decisions quickly and often. One of Henry Ford's most outstanding qualities is his habit of reaching decisions quickly and definitely, and changing them slowly. This quality is so pronounced in Mr. Ford that it has given him the reputation of being obstinate. It was this quality which prompted Mr. Ford to continue to manufacture his famous Model T, the world's ugliest car, when all of his advisors and many of the purchasers of the car were urging him to change it. Perhaps Mr. Ford delayed too long in making the change, but the other side of the story is that Mr. Ford's firmness of decision yielded a huge fortune before the change in model became necessary. There is but little doubt that Mr. Ford's habit of definiteness of decision assumes a proportion of obstinacy. But this quality is preferable to slowness in reaching decisions and quickness in changing them. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are, generally, easily influenced by the opinions of others. They permit the newspapers and the gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anyone who will accept them. If you are influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking, much less in that of transmuting your own desire into money. If you are influenced by the opinions of others, you'll have no desire of your own. Keep your own counsel when you begin to put into practice the principles described here, by reaching your own decisions and following them. Take no one into your confidence except the members of your mastermind group, and be very sure in your selection of this group that you choose only those who will be in complete sympathy and harmony with your purpose. Close friends and relatives, while not meaning to do so, often handicap one through opinions and sometimes through ridicule, which is meant to be humorous. Thousands of men and women carry inferiority complexes with them all through life because some well-meaning but ignorant person destroyed their confidence through opinions or ridicule. You have a brain and mind of your own. Use it and reach your own decisions. If you need facts or information from other people to enable you to reach decisions, as you probably will in many instances, acquire these facts or secure the information you need quietly, without disclosing your purpose. It is characteristic of people who have but a smattering or a veneer of knowledge to try to give the impression that they have much knowledge. Such people generally do too much talking and too little listening. Keep your eyes and ears wide open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of prompt decision. Those who talk too much do little else. If you talk more than you listen, you not only deprive yourself of many opportunities to accumulate useful knowledge, but you also disclose your plans and purposes to people who will take great delight in defeating you because they envy you. Remember also that every time you open your mouth in the presence of a person who has an abundance of knowledge, you display to that person your exact stock of knowledge or your lack of it. Genuine wisdom is usually conspicuous through modesty and silence. Keep in mind the fact that every person with whom you associate is, like yourself, seeking the opportunity to accumulate money. If you talk about your plans too freely, you may be surprised when you learn that some other person has beaten you to your goal by putting into action ahead of you the plans of which you talked unwisely. Let one of your first decisions be to keep a closed mouth and open ears and eyes. As a reminder to yourself to follow this advice, it will be helpful if you copy the following epigram in large letters and place it where you will see it daily. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it. This is equivalent of saying that deeds and not words are what count most. Can someone take over, please?
Hey, I can. Freedom or death on a decision. The value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. The great decisions, which served as the foundation of civilization, were reached by assuming great risks, which often meant the possibility of death. Lincoln's decision to issue his famous Proclamation of Emancipation, which gave freedom to the colored people of America, was rendered with full understanding that his act would turn thousands of friends and political supporters against him. He knew, too, that the carrying out of that proclamation would mean death to thousands of men on the battlefield. In the end, it cost Lincoln his life. That required courage. Socrates' decision to drink the cup of poison rather than compromise his personal belief was a decision of courage. It turned time ahead a thousand years and gave to people then unborn the right to freedom of thought and of speech. The decision of General Robert E. Lee when he came to the parting of the way with the Union and took up with the cause of the South was a decision of courage, for he well knew that it might cost him his own life, that it would surely cost the lives of others. But the greatest decision of all time, as far as any American citizen is concerned, was reached in Philadelphia, July 4th, 1776, when 56 men signed their names to a document which they well knew would bring freedom to all Americans or leave every one of the 56 hanging from a gallows. You have heard of this famous document, but you may not have drawn from it the great lesson in personal achievement it so plainly taught. We all remember the date of this momentous decision, but few of us realize what courage that decision required. We remember our history as it was taught. We remember dates and the names of the men who fought. We remember Valley Forge and Yorktown. We remember George Washington and Lord Cornwallis, but we know little of the real forces back of these names, dates, and places. We know still less of that intangible power which ensured us freedom long before Washington's armies reached Yorktown. We read the history of the Revolution, or we read the history of the Revolution, and falsely imagine that George Washington was the father of our country, that it was he who won our freedom, while the truth is, Washington was only an accessory after the fact, because victory for his armies had been ensured long before Lord Cornwallis surrendered. This is not intended to rob Washington of any of the glory he so richly merited. Its purpose, rather, is to give greater attention to the astounding power that was the real cause of his victory. It is nothing short of tragedy that the writers of history have missed entirely even the slightest reference to the irresistible power which gave birth and freedom to the nation destined to set up new standards of independence for all the peoples of the earth. I say it is a tragedy because it is the self-same power which must be used by every individual who surmounts the difficulties of life and forces life to pay the price asked. Let us briefly review the events which gave birth to this power. The story begins with an incident in Boston, March 5th, 1770. British soldiers were patrolling the streets, by their presence openly threatening the citizens. The colonists resented armed men marching in their midst. They began to express their resentment openly, hurling stones as well as epithets at the marching soldiers until the commanding officer gave orders, "Fix bayonets, charge." The battle was on. It resulted in the death and injury of many. The incident aroused such resentment that the Provincial Assembly, made up of prominent colonists, called a meeting for the purpose of taking definite action. Two of the members of that assembly were John Hancock and Samuel Adams. Long live their names. They spoke up courageously and declared that a move must be made to eject all British soldiers from Boston. Remember, this is a decision in the minds of two men, might properly be called the beginning of the freedom which we of the United States now enjoy. Remember, too, that the decision of these two men called for faith and courage because it was dangerous. Before the assembly adjourned, Samuel Adams was appointed to call on the governor of the province, Hutchinson, and demand the withdrawal of the British troops. The request was granted. The troops were removed from Boston, but the incident was not closed. It had caused a situation destined to change the entire trend of civilization. Strange, is it not, how the great changes, such as the American Revolution and the World War, often have their beginnings in circumstances which seem unimportant. It is interesting also to observe that these important changes usually begin in the form of a definite decision in the minds of a relatively small number of people. Few of us know the history of our country well enough to realize that John Hancock, Samuel Adams, and Richard Henry Lee of the province of Virginia were the real fathers of our country. Richard Henry Lee became an important factor in this story by reason of the fact that he and Samuel Adams communicated frequently by correspondence, sharing freely their fears and their hopes concerning the welfare of the people of their provinces. From this practice, Adams conceived the idea that a mutual exchange of letters between the 13 colonies might help to bring about the coordination of efforts so badly needed in connection with the solution of their problem. 2 years after the clash with the soldiers in Boston, March 72, Adams presented this idea to the Assembly in the form of a motion that a correspondence committee be established among the colonies with definitely appointed correspondents in each colony for the purpose of friendly cooperation for the betterment of the colonies of British America. Mark well this incident. It was the beginning of the organization of the far-flung power destined to give freedom to you and to me. The mastermind had already been organized. It consisted of Adams, Lee, and Hancock. I tell you further that if two of you agree upon the earth concerning anything for which you ask, it will come to you from my Father who is in heaven. The Committee of Correspondence was organized. Observe that this move provided the way for increasing the power of the mastermind by adding to it men from all the colonies. Take notice that this procedure constituted the first organized planning of the disgruntled colonists. In union there is strength. The citizens of the colonies had been waging disorganized warfare against the British soldiers through incidents similar to the Boston riot, but nothing of benefit had been accomplished. Their individual grievances had not been consolidated under one mastermind. No group of individuals had put their hearts, minds, souls, and bodies together in one definite decision to settle their difficulty with the British once and for all until Adams, Hancock, and Lee got together. Meanwhile, the British were not idle. They too were doing some planning and masterminding on their own account, with the advantage of having back of them money and organized soldiery. And I'm starting to make mistakes. So would somebody like to take over line 250?
Sure, I can.
Thanks, Kathy.
The Crown appointed Gage to supplant Hutchinson as the governor of Massachusetts. One of the new governor's first acts was to send a messenger to call on Samuel Adams for the purpose of endeavoring to stop his opposition by fear. We can best understand the spirit of what happened by quoting the conversation between Colonel Fenton, the messenger sent by Gage, and Adams. Colonel Fenton: I have been authorized by Governor Gage to assure you, Mr. Adams, that the governor has been empowered to confer upon you such benefits as would be necessary, endeavor to win Adams by promise of bribes, upon the condition that you engage to cease in your opposition to the measures of the government. It is the governor's advice to you, sir, not to incur the further displeasure of his majesty. Your conduct has been such as makes you liable to penalties of amount of Henry VIII, by which persons can be sent to England for trial by treason or misprision of treason at the discretion of the governor of the province. But by changing your political course, you will not only receive great personal advantages, but you will make your peace with the king. Samuel Adams had the choice of two decisions. He could cease his opposition and receive personal bribes, or he could continue and run the risk of being hanged. Clearly, the time had come when Adams was forced to reach instantly a decision which could have cost his life. The majority of men would have found it difficult to reach such a decision. The majority would have sent back an evasive reply, but not Adams. He insisted upon Colonel Fenton's word of honor that the colonel would deliver to the governor the answer exactly as Adams would give it to him. Adams' answer: then you may tell Governor Gage that I trust I have long since made my peace with the King of Kings. No personal consideration shall induce me to abandon the righteous cause of my country. And tell Governor Gage it is the advice of Samuel Adams to him no longer to insult the feelings of exasperated people. Comment as to the character of this man seems unnecessary. It must be obvious to all who read this astounding message that its sender possessed loyalty of the highest order. This is important. Racketeers and dishonest politicians have prostituted the honor which such men as Adams died. When Governor Gage received Adams' caustic reply, he flew into a rage and issued a proclamation which read, I do hereby in His Majesty's name offer and promise His most gracious pardon to all persons who shall forthwith lay down their arms and return to the duties of peaceable subjects, accepting only from the benefit of such pardon Samuel Adams and John Hancock, whose offenses are too flagitious a nature to admit to any other consideration but that of condign punishment. Man, they used big words back then. One might say in modern slang, Adams and Hancock were on the spot. The threat of the irate governor forced the two men to reach another decision, equally as dangerous. They hurriedly called a secret meeting of their staunchest supporters. Here the mastermind began to take on momentum. After the meeting had been called to order, Adams locked the door, placed the key in his pocket, and informed all present that it was imperative that a Congress of the colonists be organized and that no man should leave the room until the decision for such a Congress had been reached. Great excitement followed. Some weighed the possible consequences of such radicalism, old man fear. Some expressed grave doubt as to the wisdom of so definite a decision in defiance of the crown. Locked in that room were two men immune to fear, blind to the possibility of failure, Hancock and Adams. Through the influence of their minds, the others were induced to agree that, through the Correspondence Committee, arrangements should be made for a meeting for the First Continental Congress to be held in Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774. Remember this date. It is more important than July 4th, 1776. If there had been no decision to hold a Continental Congress, there would have been no signing of the Declaration of Independence. Before the first meeting of the new Congress, another leader in a different section of the country was deep in the throes of publishing a summary view of the rights of British America. He was Thomas Jefferson of the province of Virginia, whose relationship to Lord Dunmore, representative of the Crown of Virginia, was as strained as that of Hancock and Adams with their governor. Shortly after his famous Summary of Rights was published, Jefferson was informed that he was subject to prosecution for high treason against His Majesty's government. Inspired by the threat, one of Jefferson's colleagues, Patrick Henry, boldly spoke his mind, concluding his remarks with a sentence which shall remain forever a classic. "If this be treason, then make the most of it." It was such men as these who, without power, without authority, without military strength, without money, sat in solemn consideration of the destiny of the colonies, beginning at the opening of the First Continental Congress and continuing at intervals for 2 years until June 7, 1776. Richard Henry Lee arose, addressed the chair, and to the startled assembly made this motion. "Gentlemen, I make the motion that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they be absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved." Lee's astounding motion was discussed fervently and at such length that he began to lose patience. Finally, after days of argument, he again took the floor and declared in a clear, firm voice, "Mr. President, we have discussed this issue for days. It is only course for us to follow. Why then, sir, do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. Let her arise not to devastate and to conquer, but to reestablish the reign of peace and of law. The eyes of Europe are fixed upon us. She demands of us a living example of freedom that may exhibit a contrast in the felicity of the citizen to the ever-increasing tyranny." Before his motion was finally voted upon, Lee was called back to Virginia because of serious family illness. But before leaving, he placed his cause in the hands of his friend, Thomas Jefferson, who promised to fight until favorable action was taken. Shortly thereafter, the President of the Congress, John Hancock, appointed Jefferson as chairman of the committee to draw upon the Declaration of Independence. Long and hard the committee labored on a document which would mean, when accepted by the Congress, that every man who signed it would be signed his own death warrant, should the colonies lose in the fight with Great Britain, which was sure to follow. The document was drawn, and on July 28th, the original draft was read before the Congress. For several days it was discussed, altered, and made ready. On July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson stood before the Assembly and fearlessly read the most momentous decision ever placed upon paper. When in the human events, it is necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. When Jefferson finished, the document was voted upon, accepted, and signed by the 56 men, every one staking his own life upon his decision to write his name. By that decision came into existence a nation destined to bring to mankind forever the privilege of making decisions. By decisions made in a similar spirit of faith, and only by such decisions, can men solve their personal problems and win for themselves high estates of material and spiritual wealth. Let us not forget this. Does someone want to take over? I gotta get.
Yep, I can read on. Analyse the events which led to the Declaration of Independence, and be convinced that this nation, which now holds a position of commanding respect and power among all nations of the world, was born of a decision created by a mastermind consisting of 56 men. Well, note the fact that it was their decision which ensured the success of Washington's armies because the spirit of that decision was in the heart of every soldier who fought with him and served as a spiritual power which recognizes no such thing as failure. Note also, with great personal benefit, that the power which gave this nation its freedom is the self-same power that must be used by every individual who becomes self-determining. This power is made up of the principles described in this book. It will not be difficult to detect in the story of the Declaration of Independence at least 6 of these principles: desire, decision, faith, persistence, the mastermind, and organised planning. Throughout this philosophy will be found the suggestion that thought, backed by a strong desire, has a tendency to transmute itself into its physical equivalent. Before passing on, I wish to leave you with the suggestion that one may find in this story and in the story of the organisation of the United States Steel Corporation a perfect description of the method by which thought makes this astounding transformation. In your search for the secret of the method, do not look for a miracle, because you will not find it. You will find only the eternal laws of nature. These laws are available to every person who has the faith and the courage to use them. They may be used to bring freedom to a nation or to accumulate riches. There is no charge to save the time necessary to understand and appropriate them. Those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want and generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. That is the major reason why they are leaders. The world has a habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show he knows what he's doing. Indecision is a habit which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanency as the youth goes through graded school, high school, and even through college without definiteness of purpose. The major weakness of all educational systems is that they neither teach nor encourage the habit of definite decision. It would be beneficial if no college would permit the enrolment of any student unless and until the student declared his major purpose in matriculating. It would be of still greater benefit if every student who enters the graded schools were compelled to accept training in the habit of decision and forced to pass a satisfactory examination on this subject before being permitted to advance in the grades. The habit of indecision acquired because of the deficiencies of our school systems goes with the student to the occupation he chooses, if in fact he chooses his occupation. Generally, the youth just out of school seeks any job he can find. He takes the first place he finds because he has fallen into the habit of indecision. 98 out of every 100 people working for wages today are in the positions they hold because they lack the definiteness of decision to plan a definite position and the knowledge of how to choose an employer. Definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage. The 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence staked their lives on that decision to affix their signatures to that document. The person who reaches a definite decision to procure the particular job and to make life pay the price he asks does not stake his life on that decision. He stakes his economic freedom. Financial independence, riches, desirable business and professional positions are not within reach of the person who neglects or refuses to expect, plan, and demand these things. The person who desires riches in the same spirit that Samuel Adams desired freedom for the colonies is sure to accumulate wealth. In the chapter on organised planning, you will find a complete instructions for marketing every type of personal service. You'll find also detailed information on how to choose the employer you prefer and the particular job you desire. These instructions will be of no value to you unless you definitely decide to organise them into a plan of action. Let's head back to the start. And the first thing he tells us is that lack of decision was near the head of the list of the 30 major causes of failure.
Right.
Yeah. And so what causes a lack of decision? Lack of a clear purpose.
Or even a lack of faith.
And a lack of faith.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's so easy to overthink things, right?
Yeah.
And fear. I think fear can factor into that as well, right? If you
Yep.
fear that you can't make a good decision because of lack of knowledge or something, or lack of courage to follow through. Yeah, I think lots of things can factor into that.
So if you've got a clear purpose and a clear goal, you have faith in these principles, the only thing left is fear.
Yeah.
So then that takes courage. So
Exactly.
the only thing really that stands between you and making the decision to take the steps you need to take to bring your definite purpose into action is courage.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I read there was a workbook. I sent it out last year or months ago, but on the Think and Grow Rich for the 21st Century. So I decided to look it up and read this chapter. I haven't done that in a while. And one of the things that he says is that the problem is that good decisions don't always produce good results, and bad decisions don't always yield bad results. And I think, you know, another thing is that people expect once they make a decision that it's, you know, it's going to be cast in stone. And I think, you know, you're right. Fear is a part of it because, well, what if things don't work out? Well, you know, you're not guaranteed every time you make a decision that everything's going to work out perfectly.
Right. So that's a fear of failure, isn't it?
Yep.
You know, when I first started out on this stuff, I was directed to read this chapter. And if you guys remember, I said this last time, I read this chapter for 9 months. Okay. Now, I didn't even realize that I've been reading it for that long. And what happened was, at the end, I was just making decisions. I was reaching decisions at the drop of a hat. I wasn't even thinking about it. If I saw something, I said, I'm going to do it. That's it. And that's what I do now. It's just a simple decision. I'm going to do it. Why? It's a combination of things. And it's, to be honest with you, sometimes I don't have faith that what I've just decided is going to work out. But I've got faith in my decision that I'm going to follow through. I don't always act courageously when I make that decision. But what I do is that I decide that I am going to make a decision and I make it. I don't think what's going to happen afterwards, or I don't see anything in between. So sometimes fear doesn't take, and it doesn't even come as an option when you make a decision. I think what it is that you've got to come to the point where you are willing to make a decision because something, you look at it, it feels right. And you look and you say, that's what I want to do. And you act on it. And by action, you overcome a lot of other things. And this is why a definite chief aim in life, having that maximum goal, destroys absolutely everything else, because there is no such fear. You're not worried about making that decision. The decision is already made because you are being driven. So your definite chief aim has to be a drive, and the decision just comes naturally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you're clear on the direction that you're going in and what you want to achieve in life and how you want to live as well, like being clear on your values. If you're clear on what your highest value is, whether it's spending time with family or learning or teaching people or helping people or being a martyr or, you know, whatever your highest values are, it makes it so much easier to make decisions because you just align them with your values. That's
right. I mean, the other thing with it, Nick, is, you know, that the post that you put on the Facebook group about what is, if you had one word to describe, what is it that you asked? Is it values or ethics? I can't remember.
It would have been values.
Right. So that is an absolutely perfect example. And as you read through this, and one of the things that I realized after reading it for so long, it was when you read again, and you read again and again, just the part about Adam's, and you put yourself in Adam's shoes when he's got someone in front of him and he's basically saying, look, you either do what we tell you or we're going to kill you. That's what they're saying to him. Do what we tell you or we're going to kill you. Sorry, just to clarify, it's an act of Henry VIII. That's what it is supposed to say, act, A-C-T, which is a law. So basically he's saying to him, look, you've broken the law as far as we're concerned. If you don't do what we tell you and you take a bribe, we're going to kill you. But the guy standing there is thinking, right, what is it I've got to do? And the word that put down is integrity.
Yeah.
And that is what, yeah. Now, when you look through this and you read through that story, that is one of the key words, is a value that these guys have. They made a decision at the beginning that this is what they're going to do, and they maintain it through their own integrity, their own values and ethics. And if you don't have that, there's a lot of things you're not going to be able to follow through. So you've got to, this is why they always say you have to know yourself. What are your core values and what are your core ethics? What are you willing to accept and what are you not willing to accept? And the easiest way to find them is to ask the question, what am I not willing to accept? And if you know what you're not willing to accept, then you can draw down what your values and your ethics are. And by knowing what they are, any decision you will ever make, you base it on them. I mean, going back to Zig Ziglar, one of the two basic questions he always used to say was, is it fair on me and everybody else? And is it take me in the direction that I want to head? If the first answer is no, which is not just about me, but it's about others, is it fair on me and everybody else? And if it's not, then I'm making the decision not to follow it. And it's as simple as plain and done. That is down to knowing your core values. And this is where making a decision at times, even if you fear what's going to come and you've got that little bit of fear, you don't really sure whether you're going to be able to achieve it or not. But you can answer and say, you know, that falls within what I'm aiming for and it's not going to harm anybody else and it's going to be good for me. You can make a decision very, very easily.
Yeah, and if it only comes down to fear, trust the principles and make the decision.
Exactly.
Bob Proctor has there's 4 questions he asks whenever you need to make a major decision. He goes, 1, do I want to be, do, or have this? 2, will being, doing, or having this move me in the direction of my goal? 3, is being, doing, or having this in harmony with God's laws or the laws of the universe? And 4, will being, doing, or having this violate the rights of others?
Yep.
Yeah, you see, for me, the most important one, sorry, Kath. For me, the last one is actually the most important one.
Yep.
You know, you see a lot of people, and this is one of those 2 questions from Zig. I've actually stuck to those. The first time I heard them, I thought to myself, you know, for me personally, and this is why I mean, morals and ethics and what you believe in. For me, that last question comes first. Then the next question is it good for me? The third question for me from those 4 would be, is it moving me in the direction that I want? And then it would be, is it what I really want to do, have, or be? Because what I've realized along this journey is that what we want to be, do, and have changes. it never stays the same. Because we evolve. As you learn something and you take something on, you learn about it, and you begin to think a little bit differently. And instead of going down the same direction, you actually move a little bit to the left or to the right, in the sense of an emotional content, a thought process, and you think to yourself, you know, that's where I was going, but somehow that it's not really everything that I wanted to do. So you take a little bit of a sidestep, and you feel more comfortable taking that sidestep. You say, right, I'm making the decision to move along this line because now this is what I want to be, do, and have. You know? So
yeah.
When you take those questions, they're brilliant questions, but I would line them up to the way that you feel more comfortable with them. And that's what I did. Every time I come across something, I don't say this is what it is. I've learned to take different lessons and apply them to my core values and my core ethics. And that way I feel more comfortable, and I find that I can make a decision much more easily, a lot more quickly, and a lot more definitely. And by doing that, I find myself moving forward a lot quicker.
Yeah. He says that people who fail to accumulate money without exception have the habit of reaching decision, if at all, very slowly, and that's because they have no direction. They have nothing to base it on. They don't know what their values are. They're just floating with the breeze, and they've got nothing to base a decision on.
I thought of the expression, you're an extra in your own life movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're just kind of
giving your script.
Going with the flow. You know, they don't think about their life. They just go to their jobs and...
Yeah, they use Henry Ford as an example. Napoleon Hill uses Henry Ford as an example as having one of the most outstanding qualities is his habit of reaching decisions quickly and definitely, is because he had precise goals and he didn't change that decision because he was determined. He would continue on with the thing. Look at the way he had his men create the V8 motor. He would not take no for an answer, and it took, well, at least more than 6 months, I know that. And he just kept saying to them, no, just keep on, I want it and I will have it. And because he was so definite with what he wanted to achieve, firstly, and he was determined to get it, he didn't change his mind.
Yep.
One thing that I want to add about making a decision is that I find it very liberating.
Yeah, doesn't it feel good?
It does. It feels awesome. It feels like a power.
Yep.
That's exactly it. You see, when he talks about decision, when you make a decision, and he talks about the power is an amalgamation of all the different principles that exist within the book. But decision one, well, having a definite chief aim is at the top of the list. And personally, I found that decision is the next one down, because if you don't have an aim, you can't really make a decision. You've already said that, and you're completely right. You cannot be wrong on that. So the next one for me is decision, because once you make that decision, it is liberating, like you said, and it does have that direction that is going to drive you a lot more in the direction that you want. And for me, when it comes to decision, it always reminds me of Henry Ford's persistence in that 8-cylinder engine. He decided that he was going to have it. And even though it's in another chapter, that single thing where, that single scene, as Napoleon says, if you can see the back of it and understand what goes on there, then you've got the principles of, you don't need to read the rest of the book really. But what he's on about is that he has got a lot of people, his mastermind, to create what he wants, because he decided that that is what he wanted. That was his goal. He wanted this 8-cylinder engine, and that was a decision that he was not going to budge from. And this is why he mentions obstinacy. It's because Henry Ford would not budge at all for anything. It didn't matter. If they could have turned around and said, but it really, really is impossible. There's no such material on this earth. He would still have stuck there and said, I don't care. Go and do it. Simple as.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's such a good example of not allowing the opinions of others to influence you, because sometimes we'll really want to do something and we'll start to make the decision to do it, and then your friends or family will say, do you really think you can do that, or how's it going to turn out? This is going to make it impossible, that's going to make it impossible. He wasn't an engineer. He conceived the ideas and his engineers were working on it. So engineers were telling him this isn't possible, and he still stood by his guns. So that's a massive example.
Well, then now on the first page, though, it's kind of an opposite, where he refused to change the Model T. You know, people were telling him that he should change it because it was the world's ugliest car, and he just stuck to his guns. Yep. So sometimes you make decisions and it may not be the right result, but, you know, you learn from it.
Yeah.
And, you know, because every time you make a decision, and if it turns out to not be a good, you know, the results weren't what you wanted, well, then you just reassess and you make another decision. And I think by doing that, like based on like what Christoph said, eventually, if the results don't turn out the way you want, like you're not putting your whole life into it. It's not like well, I mean, these examples are life and death, but you know what? I mean, you lose that fear that grips you from having to make a decision, because you just know, like, well, if it doesn't turn out, then, you know, it's an opportunity to learn to do something else or go a different way. You make a new decision and you move on.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow, and if you don't make that decision initially, you're going to be in limbo forever. So at least if you've made the decision, you've started on the path, and we know the path is winding, so it's just another bend.
Yep. And there's going to be people around you who, if you make a decision and things don't quite turn out, who are going to want to rub it in your face or what have you. You know, but you just got to, like, you know, just shake it off and make the next decision and move on.
Yeah, and, you know, it's hard for the people around you when you start making changes and start growing as a person, because they think, what's wrong with the status quo? What's wrong with our relationship? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with our life as it is now, even if they're just a friend that you don't spend an awful lot of time with? So it's difficult for other people in your experience to watch you starting to grow, because it makes them question themselves.
Right. And their fears, their jealousies are going to, that's why I think Hill says, you know, keep it to yourself, except for your mastermind group, because people around you are going to want to poo-poo the idea and all that. You know, they're not going to believe in your dream. And there's someone in my Bob Proctor mastermind group, and she deals with that with her twin, who, you know, she's always telling her good news about the next thing that happened, and her twin's always, you know, poo-pooing on her parade, which is really kind of sad. But I think it's, again, her sister, it's fear. And I just said, you know, just don't tell her.
Especially being a twin to the person who's growing, that would be really scary, because that must mean I need to grow too, and that's very scary.
Yeah, because their identities are so intertwined, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And she's choosing a different path of just getting married and raising a family. She wants a career, whereas her twin has the marriage and the family, and, you know, they're very religious, and it's like, oh, you know, you need to find a man and you need to do what I did. And she's like, no, I want a career. She wants a man in her life, but it's not everything. It's not her sole focus, because she is passionate about her career. And I'm like, well, good for you. Then my suggestion to her, I sent her from this, it's like, don't tell her. You know, when something happens, like, just keep it to yourself, because, you know, people around you, this is a perfect example. People around you are going to think you're nuts.
Yeah, you got to create your own mold, and those people don't want you to break the mold that they're happy with.
Exactly.
Another reason why you actually keep it to yourself is because it actually empowers you. When you release the idea, it's like you're releasing a little bit of the energy of that thought. Whereas by keeping it to yourself, you're building your major purpose. Now, I'm not talking about goals. Your definite chief aim in life, the one that we directed to write in the chapter in faith, you know, the 6 steps. That one, you don't tell anybody, ever. Even when you reach it, you don't tell anybody. People will see you reaching certain goals and progressing and so on. But your goal in life, your definite chief aim in life may be so high that you may never reach it, and that's fine. The whole purpose is to be continually moving. But what you do share and what you can't do is with your mastermind group, you share the goals that you want to achieve as you're moving towards it. The best way to describe it is, have any of you guys ever played Risk, the board game?
No.
No.
I can't. I must do. I just can't remember it, Crystal.
Right.
But it's familiar.
It's a world domination game, all right? Now, I'll give you a perfect example of it. I'll make it very quick. It was Christmas. I would have been a teenager. My dad had recently come out of the army. I hadn't even joined the army. My sister's 8 years old. Now, we're all playing this game, and we've sort of got an idea of what everybody's doing. We have no idea what my sister's doing. Nothing at all. Then all of a sudden, she takes all of us out off the board. My dad says to her, "What was your card?" She shows him her card, and he says, "World domination," right? Now, my dad knew tactics, and he got bitten by an 8-year-old that didn't have any clue on tactics. He never played with us Risk again. And the whole idea, the only reason I'm mentioning it is because she never ever told anyone what that plan was. I mean, we were sort of hinting as we were playing what we're trying to do because you could see it. But with her, it was so random, you didn't even know what she was doing. We thought that she just lost the plot and didn't know what she was doing. And then all of a sudden, she's got world domination. The reason for it is because you have this energy that's been withheld, and what you're doing is that you're working on that single goal. You may release every now and then the smaller aims and goals that you've got, but you definitely chief aim, you never tell it. You maintain that energy because then it builds and it builds and it builds into a burning desire. That's why people never tell you their major aim.
And I guess that's a similar principle as a problem shared is a problem halved, because you've dissipated the energy. Exactly.
Now, if you think of it that way, Nick, it's absolutely perfect.
That is so interesting. Sorry guys, it's Natalie. I was listening to you all before. When Nicole asked the question of what's about fear, right? So I thought that people don't have the belief in themselves. That's why they don't go forward sometimes. Like you believe that you will succeed. Maybe you know what you want to do, that goal that you want to do. But sometimes people don't have the belief that they can do it. And
they don't have confidence.
Yeah, they don't have the confidence, right?
In themselves, yep.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So you mentioned that, but then you think about Bob and what Bob said, because you guys work with Bob Proctor and PGI, but he said it himself. When he started out on the path, he didn't believe in it. He believed what the other guy was saying to him. You understand? So he didn't really believe in it, but he made the decision, regardless of belief, to read the book, to do what he was getting told to do, because he believed in the other guy. He didn't believe that this was going to work, but he believed in the other guy. So your belief can be redirected towards something that you are able to accept.
And the way that I was going to say that I actually do that myself. I have problems believing in my personal ability, but I believe in the principles of success. So I just turn back to the principles of success, and I just say, okay, if I do this, if I have faith, if I make a decision, if I, all of the principles together, if I just do all of the formula, then I can't fail. It's impossible. So if you don't have faith in yourself, you can have faith in the principles.
Yep.
So it makes sense. So I think that what you guys are referring to is belief in, let's say, the process, a belief in the principles of success, which Nicole is referring to.
Yeah.
But what I think I'm referring to is the belief that you have of yourself within your own mindset. Because we can all, I think it's easier, because that includes me too as well. It's easier to believe why someone else believe this is going to happen. That's the truth, or that they're going to be successful, or this is what happened. But it's the other thing when you are the person making those steps. Like, you can tell me, okay, you can jump off the cliff and you won't die. But when I have to jump the cliff, right?
So that's when it comes back to courage. You've just got to take courage and understand that when you follow the principles, you can't fail. You've got to get that faith, I guess, happening. And when you do it in small steps, you slowly build up the belief in yourself.
Yeah, makes sense, yeah. Because there's belief in yourself. And you know what, too, that leads me to something else that came to my mind is like confidence. I don't know who said confidence earlier when I was just started to speak. It's the fact that you know your skill, or you know one thing. And let's say me, I know I can tell you that I don't know how to build a house. I'm not a carpenter, and I don't know how to learn, and I don't want to learn. I have no desire. However, someone else might know about that. So if you, hey, Kelly. Sorry. So if you know what your skill is and you go forward in learning your skills and perfecting your skills, there is a quote that goes along those words. I don't know what's the exact word, but the quotes that goes like this, that says, I fear the man who has done the same moves 1,000 times than a man who have done 1,000 things.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. So that's what it is. So if you know in your own right, in your own industry, or in your own skill, that you know what you know, and you don't need to know anything else. And the fact that you don't need anything else, you would know who to attract, who to maybe be a partner. Like, look at us, right? It was just a thought, and we're all like sharing together. So I think that once it comes to your skills and knowing what you know and sticking to it and having that confidence that you know enough, because I can tell you how many books I'm reading, how many things I'm doing, but if I know enough and I think I do, then you can move forward. But
just on that point, Natalie, that can be a real paralysis if you want to know enough before you get started. I know what you are. I know that you are a human being and that you have abilities through this power that we're talking about in this chapter. When you start where you stand, like Napoleon Hill tells you to, and you take a leap of faith with courage, even though you don't know everything you need to know yet, but you just start taking that first step, you'll know everything you need to do today. Tomorrow, you'll know everything that you need to do for tomorrow. Until you make the decision to take that first step today, you're going to be sitting in procrastination forever until you know every single thing and every single fact that you need to know to get started.
So and you will never know.
Mary Morrissey was saying exactly that today. She gave the number one thing to stop doing was having the Lone Ranger syndrome, thinking that you have to do everything yourself. And the number one thing to start doing was start doing that, whatever you can do with what you have from where you are. That's exactly what she said.
There's a quote from Carlyle. Don't ask me who that is, but I love it. It says, go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll see how to go farther. Yeah. And isn't that true? It's like you start taking action, and as you're taking action, things start to align. You get to, because you've got more information, more knowledge, you perceive things kind of line up. So I just love that. So it's like, go as far as you can see, you'll see how to go farther.
And you need to use all of the skills that you have. Until you use all of the skills that you have now, the other skills you have won't be added to you, or you won't find them from within you. And Wallace Wattles talks about that. Fill your space first, and then the next thing will be given to you. The Bible says it. Everything you need will be given to you, but not until you use what you already have. So until you start using what you have now, which may be a quarter of what you think you need, the others won't be added to you.
Yeah, this is so true. This is like a big learning for me, actually, personally, to tell you guys the truth. Because I didn't realize
why it's so important to understand the principles, so that you can start taking action without feeling like you need to know it all first.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's great. This is big learning here.
Yeah, we had some really major points made today. I think it was really, really good learning today.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're right, Nicole, because analysis paralysis, right? There's so many people who like that too as well. And I've seen, and I've also catch myself doing the same thing too. And if you look, I mean, if everyone's like that too as well, like in any point in their life where they had to make a decision and they didn't make the decision just because they think that they have to know more or they don't know enough of something, think of that moment where you did not make that decision and where you are now and how much far off you could have been.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Natalie. Good point.
I mean, look how many of us probably have put off making decisions, and a year later, we're probably still, depending on what it is, maybe it's like, man, if I had made the decision a year ago, just think where I'd be now.
Oh my God, that's a good point, for sure.
Yeah, and I've forgotten what I learned a year ago too.
Yeah.
And you know what, too, like going to what you just said, I think, Cheryl, I think you who said that. If you did make a move, let's say a year ago, right? Then, let's say, for example, having kids, right? Me. If you make a decision to have the kids before I was saying, okay, should I not, or whatever, or can we, or should we, or whatever, right? It's all the if, right? Once you have it, and then now I am like, why did I have the kid before? I would be younger, energy. I would have more. I was like, and I was saying, why was I not ready? And that's the question many of us ask. When will I ever be ready? But you will never be ready.
No.
Right?
Well, you can suffer from analysis paralysis, trying to weigh all the pros and cons. And one of the things Napoleon Hill said in that workbook is sometimes, part of the decision making is your gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like you keep it simple. Don't try to overanalyze. Make a decision. And if the result isn't there, then make, that you want, then make another decision. But he says part of the decision-making process is your gut instinct, part of it.
Mm-hmm. That is brilliant, yeah. Because
what Mary was saying that today as well, too. She was talking about how to create a question.
Mm-hmm.
There's to get answers for yourself. Like one thing could be, ask yourself, what's one step that I can take in the next 5 minutes that would move me towards my goal? So, and then you just sit and write down every single answer that comes to your mind. And they could be stupid answers or they could be great answers. So then after you've written everything down, you sort those ideas by the feeling of amplification. How do those answers make you feel? So that's exactly what we were talking about here about the decision. Like, make your decision according to how you feel, not about how you think.
Yep. Yeah. And also sometimes Bob says, like, get it down to the ridiculously simple if you can.
Yes.
Like something complex into maybe smaller parts. So, like do the first step. Okay, I'm going to make the decision on this. And then, you go from there. just break it down and try to get to the basic simple.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you can prepare yourself for each stage of your endeavor. So you don't need to know what you're going to be teaching someone or building in a year. Just know very well and do your research for what you're doing this week, and then next week do your research for what you're going to be doing next week. But don't not start because you don't know what you're going to be building or teaching in a year.
Exactly. And also, like, to mitigate the fear of making the wrong decision, you can also say to yourself, well, if this is the wrong decision, what's the worst that can happen? And then it just makes it stupid. You just going, well, why was I so worried? If this was, this is the worst that can happen, this is how I can deal with it. So then it just makes it easy.
Yeah, we've got to remember to ask ourselves questions, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can ask when you made, if the results, it's like you can look at what you based your decision on initially, and you learn from it, and then you learn to make better decisions. You know, maybe you're like, you know what, I didn't research this part. You know, maybe it wasn't quite as informed as it should have been, or but you learn from it. So you go, you know, next time when I need to make a decision, I'm going to get all the facts, or, you know. So you look at it as an opportunity to improve your decision-making, problem-solving skills.
Yeah, so worst case scenario, if it was a bad decision, it was an opportunity to learn.
Exactly.
Right.
And maybe you find that when you analyze the decision that you made, you might find out that you were listening to the wrong people, or you weren't getting your facts from the right sources, or
actually
whatever.
on that point, a really great question that I heard yesterday at this wellness seminar that I was at, she said a really good question to ask yourself is, whose belief is that? Is it mine, or was it my mother's, my teacher's? Whose idea was that? Whose thought is that in my head? Is it mine? It's not even mine.
Absolutely.
See, that's one of the things that I sort of had to ask myself when I was going along this journey to figure out why I was following a path for 18 years and I couldn't figure out why. And my mom mentioned something and I said, no, it can't be. But that was my ego talking, because I didn't want to accept the fact that that an external influence had such a massive impact on my life, even before I joined the army. And then for 16 years following, as a result of that impact, I was following an idea which wasn't even mine. And when you suddenly ask yourself the question, you know, you just sit down and say, right, where did I get that idea from? How did it get into my head? Did I think it up, or what was the circumstance that, how did it come about? And when you start asking yourself questions, and the key is asking yourself the right questions, and you know they're the right questions because they're the questions you don't want to ask. So you ask them.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It's the question you ask. That's so true.
Yeah. You've got to ask you a question that you do not want to ask. That's how I decided to change my life. It was the first webinar that Bob Proctor had. It was the third night, and the question the guy asks was, do you love what you're doing or what you are about to do? Now, I'd heard that question before, but I didn't really pay much attention to it because I was too orientated towards what I wanted to do. And there was too much noise around me, as in too many people, too many things going on, too many contacts getting into contact because of cause and effect, sending the energy out there, sending the vibration of what I wanted to do, and it was coming back. Whereas this one night, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was no way that I was going to get interrupted. And I wasn't sending any vibrations because I was focusing on one thing. I want to hear what you've got to say. And when he asked that question, I then turned it and asked it on myself. And this is where that big change happened to me, which is where I went from thinking from the light to an abyss of darkness with and I couldn't even see the pinpoint of light. But that develops. And this is where I started, all of a sudden, when I started asking different questions. And when you ask different questions, you send different vibration out, and then you send a different vibration, you get different answers back. Your subconscious begins to look for different things because you've asked for something else. So you've got two things working for you. One is your subconscious, which you suddenly, basically, I shocked myself, like an electric shock. And the synapses just decided to do something else. The end being decided to do something else. And my subconscious began to focus on a different perspective. And because I was focusing on different perspective, it was looking for different things. And because of that, at the same time, I'm sending out that vibration into the universe. And it's reverberating and it's bringing certain things back to me, which I'm now seeing. So what you do at the end of the day is, by asking yourself the right question, is you're actually deciding that you're going to change your life. That's what you're actually doing. It's a conscious decision to change my life. Even though you don't realize that's what you're doing, it's still a conscious decision. It's one of the biggest decisions you can make, to ask yourself the question you don't want to ask. But you've got to ask it. And this is where courage comes in, that Nick's been talking about. This takes a lot of courage. You've got to be able to do it. And sometimes you might even do it without even noticing it. Like me, I was there, I was listening to something, and I was sort of spaced out a little bit. Well, not in the sense that I've been taking drugs or anything. It's just because I've been so focused on what I was listening, I was spaced out. And even when I was saying the question, I could feel, that gut feeling like, don't ask it, don't ask it, don't ask it. Damn it, you've asked it. That was it. And the minute I asked that question, it's like, you knob. Why did you ask that question? Now we've gone into the abyss and we didn't want to go into the abyss. And you're thinking to yourself, and that's when you realize we're actually two people in one. We are our conscious mind, we are a subconscious mind, and all around that is all this ether where we send a vibration out. And your conscious mind is saying, well, do you really want to think that? And your subconscious is saying, no, you don't, because it goes against everything that we've believed in for so long, which means we've got to change it. We're starting again.
And it's hard.
Saying, yeah, but so what? It's like, no. And the other side saying, oh, go on, let's ask it. And your subconscious mind is going, no! And it's screaming at you. That's when you know you're asking.
Well, look how many people stay in terrible marriages because they don't want to ask that question. They don't want to be aware, like, am I really happy? I mean, women even stay, not just women, men, but stay in abusive relationships because they don't want to become aware and go into the abyss and ask that question. Because once you do, well, like things start to change, and then do you really want to take action? And then fear comes in and all that stuff.
Yeah.